How about now? Checking testing 1 2. Checking testing 1 2 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
Not.
Oh wait.
Doesn't seem to be coming through here.
I'm gonna put the wash up to make sure we can see the transition. Let me know when you see the transition. All right, so then we have a good delay. 1 2 3 4.
Hi, everybody. So welcome everyone. We're here to discuss workers organizing and building power at the University of Pennsylvania, which is the largest employer in the city of Philadelphia. So we've got graduate student teaching, research assistants at Penn. They're on the eve of a potential historic strike here in the city. And they're fighting to win their first union contract. So in recent years, there's been a huge surge of organizing of workers in new unions on campuses, museum workers, librarians, researchers. And they've been building on the work of employees who first started organizing at Penn decades ago. So Philadelphia in 2026 is the city of this phrase, heads and beds. And that reflects kind of a larger economic trend we've seen across the United States as we've gone through deindustrialization. So Penn employs tens of thousands of healthcare, researcher, and education workers at facilities across the region, not just here in Philadelphia. So building organized worker power in our city isn't really possible unless we're looking at one of the biggest players, which is Penn, and the other area universities and hospitals, which we hope will be triggered by the success that these workers are organizing and fighting for right here. Introduce myself real quick. My name is Peter Doherty, he, him pronouns. I am a school teacher with the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. I'm also one of the labor co-chairs of the Philadelphia City Labor Committee. And I just want to say really quickly, I was honored when I was asked to help moderate this panel. First of all, because an injury to one is an injury to all. And the fact that these workers still do not have a fair contract is disgusting to me. And second, as someone who teaches at a school in the district that is facing closure as part of the facilities management plan, I'm directly impacted, and my son is also impacted. In fact, there was a student at the school district by the money that doesn't come into our school district because of the bonkers, I would say, way that the money is handled in the city with the tax, or not being taxed, and looking at Penn as kind of the landlord of sorts. But we'll get into that. I won't spoil too much of our guests' talking points. So I'm excited. We have three panelists here today to discuss building working power, Penn, and the connections with Philadelphia. So we are joined by Guru Shabadi. He's with Get Up UAW Bargaining Committee member, graduate student research assistant at Penn at the Department of Computer and Information Science. We have Robert Harris, who's the Vice President of ASME District 47, a member of ASME Local 590, and former library specialist at Penn Libraries. And last but not least, we've got Rick Krajewski, Penn alumnus, and a member of the district of the Pennsylvania House Representative representing the 188th district, which includes Penn's campus. So to get started, our first question: what is your connection to the University of Pennsylvania? What is your experience organizing on campus? How did you get involved in the struggle and in this fight?
Firstly, I would like to thank DSA Labor for having having us here. We've had overwhelming support and love and solidarity pouring in from all across the city for our campaign, and it is incredibly empowering. So I am a graduate worker and a research assistant in the computer science department at Penn. So all the incredible discoveries and inventions that Penn takes credit for, all of the work that goes behind that is labor that is performed by other graduate workers such as myself. I am an international student worker from India, and when I received an offer from Penn, I was like, wow, it's this respected institution, world-renowned, must be a good place, a lot of smart people. I think I should take this up. This was before I knew about higher education organizing in general. And then right after I accepted the offer was when the graduate workers had just won their union in their union vote. And I arrived, and then I realized that like we are overworked and heavily underpaid. These are some of the smartest individuals that I work with, and I see them like in their labs working overnight, hustling to produce results to keep up with the pace of the academic world. Yeah, so that really pushed me into organizing, especially because I saw that due to this like intense pressure to continuously work and produce research results, it leads to incredible tensions between student workers and other people in the university that we work with. So yeah, since we are only here in the university for like 4 to 5 years, the university and everyone loves to see us as just in a phase of training, that we're here to just train to become academics in the future, but our labor certainly goes undervalued. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. I've been speaking too much.
This is your day. Take it up. My name is Robert. I'm the Vice President of ASME District Council 47. And also, technically, I'm still an employee at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm a library specialist. At my last position, I was in the chemistry department, so the population that I worked with most generally were the graduate students in the chemistry department. I'll say I got here honest. My mother is actually the current president of Local 590, who are the library workers at Penn. But in my position as the vice president of the council, we also have the Locals 397, which are the museum workers who were recently organized and have moved to a second contract, and as well as the food service workers at the residential halls, which are Local 54. We're currently in a contract fight for our first level librarians throughout the Penn library system. When I first started sort of in union leadership, it was because, you know, mama told you was gonna be a steward, so then you started being a steward. And then you joined the executive board, and growing up as a labor leader, she often had me and my sister at labor women's conferences around the country, and I started working more with the council as a delegate and then an executive board member, and now in my current office. Did I answer all the questions? Yeah, great.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you to Philly DSA, the Labor Committee, for bringing us together. Thank you for Get Up for your courage and leadership. It's been exciting to be part of this collective project. So my name is Rick Krajewski. I currently serve as the state representative for the 188th Legislative District, which is in West and Southwest Philadelphia. I've been in office since 2020. Before that, I was an organizer, and then before that, I was an alum of the University of Pennsylvania. I graduated in class of 2013 from the engineering department, and my entry point into this work, frankly, was my experience as an undergraduate on campus, because it was how I got politicized due to my extreme alienation as a poor black student on campus, entering a space that had immense wealth, immense privilege, and continuously feeling like I had to prove that I belonged there and that I was someone who deserved to have access to this education, and just being terrified of being revealed as a fraud, as an imposter, as a like a DEI applicant or something. And there were constant messages that fed into this alienation. It actually culminated in my freshman year when I was accused of plagiarism by one of my professors, which was 100% racially motivated. And so I had this experience after graduating where I was like, I got this education, I went to this privileged institution, but why was I so oppressed and traumatized as part of going through that experience? And that was a big part of my political story, was realizing how when we hoard wealth, when we hoard privilege behind these kind of walls of meritocracy and exceptionalism, how anyone who is not a cis, white, wealthy man becomes dehumanized and alienated by that. Even being alienated as a black person on campus, being told, don't go past 40th and Market, right? Like, there are all these kind of messages that told me I was in a place where I did not belong. And that is very much due to the privatization, the kind of privilegization of higher education. And I see Penn as being like kind of the poster child of this like hoarding of wealth and privilege and resources in one of the most incarcerated, impoverished, majority black cities in the country. So as someone who now represents this community, as someone who has an experience on campus, you know, I feel a responsibility to chart another path forward and to say that an institution with an endowment of $22 billion and counting should maybe invest in some schools so they don't fucking close in our school district, right? Or that a school with a $22 billion endowment can afford to pay its grass union workers because they are workers. And they have also been alienated. Their labor is dispossessed of themselves. They're told they're just temp workers, right? Like all of this institution kind of relies on this foundation of like alienating people, right? Alienating workers from other workers, alienating students from each other. And so I'm committed to the organizing project on campus, one, to get the workers their due contracts and to have them be invested in, but also to use that to open a conversation about how do we actually redistribute power and wealth in this institution for everyone that's attached to it and also to the people of West and Southwest Philadelphia.
All right, thank you. So we've heard kind of the story that has brought you to this moment. So now we're going to talk about this moment right now. So for you first, Guru, can you speak a little longer on, Tuesday is coming up. There's the strike deadline has been put out. What are you all fighting for right now? You've talked about like undervalued labor. What has been going on at the bargaining table? What are we fighting for?
First and foremost, I would say that like we are fighting for livable wages that keeps up with the rising cost of living in the city of Philadelphia. We are fighting for dependent healthcare because there are a lot of student workers with dependents who the university does not pay for childcare or dependent healthcare. Just to also like give you an example of how like dire the situation could be for someone. If you're an international student who comes to the United States to study or be a PhD student worker on an F1 visa, your spouse is not allowed to work. So you have to pay out of pocket for their healthcare and their living expenses. This is the situation of several of my coworkers. Some of the other things that we are fighting for is having a strong union because like Penn wants to have a say in like how our union functions, but all they want to do is undermine our worker power. Yeah. I think that.
All right, similar question, obviously a slightly different situation. How are the librarians who asked me right now fighting, right? What are the issues that they're facing right now with Penn?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the support staff of the library has been organized for close to now 55 years. But recently, there's been organizing of the first level librarians in that space. So they're actually will be organizing under the same local, but they will have a different working unit because some of our demands are different. We also this year for the established 590 local will be entering into contract negotiations. It's interesting when you're working or came up through a union that has really strong established contract rights. You know, there are a lot of things that we have that folks would never ask for in the contract, or would be very, very difficult fights to have. But of course, you know, the basic things of making sure that you have a competitive pay rate, you know, stronger health care continues to be a space. As any of the workers in Philadelphia, and mind you, I know, supporting the workers for the city of Philadelphia as well, the ability to flex your work schedule or have alternative work schedules is a huge one now at the university. We also will be fighting with Local 54 for their new contract this year. Our last contract for Local 590, we actually did a 5-year contract. And hearing from our members, we are realizing that at the time, you know, inflation isn't what it is today. So we will be fighting for making a lot of strong demands around our pay rates there, and making sure that people have the ability to continue to organize on campus, and especially in the library systems. In the current 590 contract as well, we have a space where there is support around folks getting their master's in library science if they want to continue on as librarians. It has been Penn's space that generally people who get, you know, that graduate degree in library science at other universities, mind you, not through Penn, generally do not, it doesn't end up that they get jobs as librarians at Penn. They have to go somewhere else. These are folks who have worked in the Penn libraries, know the system of the Penn libraries, and generally once they get their graduate in library science, they are never hired at the Penn libraries. Not never, 1 or 2 times, but very rare. So we truly believe that the workers at the library, especially that support staff handling those materials, doing the ordering, a lot of that work is really beneficial to the university, and it would behoove them to continue to keep those folks who have created a life and a family space here in Philadelphia. So an opportunity for that to happen more will certainly be something that we're fighting for.
All right, and for you, Rick, so a little bit more, your role is a little more removed from like the direct shop floor, but how have you in your role as a state representative been involved in the fight, and how have you seen it from your vantage point playing out in your role?
Yeah, so I feel really grateful to be in a position where I can play any kind of support organizing role to what's happening on campus. And I'll just say, again, kind of thinking about my positionality to it, like it feels important, one, because there are so many resources on campus that, one, should be redistributed to the workers, but also to the community that I represent, right? I represent the residential area to the west and southwest of the University of Pennsylvania, where 2 of my schools in my district are closing. And because they have not been given sufficient financial resources. And I was told explicitly that one of those schools is closing, Robeson High School on 42nd and Sansom, or Ludlow rather, because they want the building. They want the building because the gentrification has caused a lot of these properties to become very valuable, right? And so the university is responsible and complicit in a lot of the things that happen in our neighborhoods, in our city. It is also the largest employer. It is the largest private employer in Philadelphia. So I, as someone who represents a section of Philadelphia, have a responsibility to think about how this institution can invest in my constituents. And that means its workers, that means the residents that also live in the neighborhood. And it also means supporting the organizing that is happening on campus to redistribute resources amongst the worker ecosystem. And that has been really exciting to support, because it's been exciting to see workers develop cross-sector solidarity, right? Because Penn is so big and so amorphous, I think it can be easy for some of these sectors of workers to just be in their own silos and to think, okay, I just have my little, they may not even have a union. They may just be, some admin workers somewhere in some office building somewhere in campus, right? And have no idea that there are other workers on campus that are agitating and organizing for better workplaces. And so I've been playing a role in facilitating these kind of collaborative spaces. In 2023, we jump-started the Coalition of Workers at Penn, which is basically a coalitional project supported by the Philadelphia AFL-CIO, whose offices we're in right now, to basically bring together, one, all of the existing unions on campus so that they can think about long-term visioning, how to support each other, how to go to the mat for each other, but also to support these budding nascent movements like, Get Up 3.0, right? And even getting the resident advisors to win their union on campus, supporting the physicians at the hospital to win their union and their first contract. It's been a space that's already led to these beautiful moments of solidarity, of skill sharing, and just support to make you feel less alone. Because I think that is the biggest thing in organizing against such a big behemoth is it's hard to not feel like, damn, I am alone. Like, this thing is so big and so powerful. And so to be able to come together and create a space where people can feel a sense of collective might, which we've done with the coalition, has been exciting. And I've been grateful to bring other electeds to support, to throw down the picket line. We just circulated a sign-on letter with the Philadelphia delegation telling Penn to negotiate with the union so that we don't get to a strike. But if we do get to a strike, I assure you we're going to be there on the picket line. I will bring some of my colleagues. We're going to show up for this space.
Awesome. I'm really grateful that you spoke a lot about the opportunities for the community at large, and all of you have kind of spoken about what this means for the workers themselves. Shifting gears a little bit, and you kind of got at this a little bit, Rick. What are some of the real challenges organizing at Penn? What have been some of the roadblocks and the fragments you've had to encounter? What have you been overcome? What have you been able to overcome? What still remains a thorn? And would anyone want to go first? We don't have to go in order.
Sure. I think that what Penn does is, and what is the culture at Penn, is that siloed space. A lot of workers don't communicate. Even within the working units within the library, there's a concerted effort by management to say that the support staff are support staff and the librarians are professional employees, as if our work doesn't cross over at all, okay? Or as if, there's a class system that is set up there with that work. With that sort of siloed, it allows them to block out any sort of transparency that workers could have with each other around how they're fighting. And the coalition building that's happened through the AFL-CIO and through Rep. Krajewski over here and other elected officials and our organizers has been really beneficial in breaking that down, giving a little bit more transparency about what is winnable at the university and how folks who have been here a little bit longer have been successful in those wins, or at least being able to retain that language in their contract. So that's a great space that bringing together workers across the campus has been beneficial for the organizing drives that are happening. But the way that Penn silos folks and pushes them apart is their tool, their tactic to be able to combat that. Who's going for
it? Also graduate workers interact with, I completely relate with the siloed workspaces. I can also give you a few more examples from our campaign that we have faced significant challenges in getting the university to provide us commitment and strong protections with. For example, with respect to international workers, over a third of our bargaining unit are international workers who feel threatened under the current administration, and protecting international workers is not something that a small group of people can do. It's really like a community effort, and I believe that like growing worker power and unionization at Penn can really help us get there.
I think just to add in, I think Robert talked a little bit about like the lack of transparency, and I think really like the opacity of decision making on campus generally. I've seen this through some of the worker organizing, but even in other organizing that's happened on campus, whether it was the encampment protesting a genocide in 2024, or even trying to push back against the DEI rollback that have happened this year, or last year rather. It's been extremely challenging to like actually get the university and sort of these individual members of leadership to actually give a clear map of like who is responsible for this decision, because they don't want us to know, because then we have a target that we can like organize against, right? I can remember actually being in a meeting with President Jameson, and he said that the decisions on campus were made by a matrix of people. And then one of the other electeds was like, so you're saying we're in the matrix now? Like, what do you mean? I didn't know we were in the matrix, And they just kind of say these things that like aren't actually true, right? And this person was actually calling it out in the meeting. He was like, look, I know how this works, right? Like, this is a corporate structure. There's a board. There's a room of people that are making this decision. Who are they? Right, and it has been impossible to get the university to like actually like relinquish those answers, and so that kind of leads to the second thing, which is I think a lot, and this is not even just true for Penn. I think this is true for a lot of liberal institutions. Increasingly, they kind of give these like this rhetoric of like, oh, we make decisions based on like our values and like the moral thing to do, and it's actually just about financial interests. Like, it's actually just about money. And Penn increasingly operates like a business more than an academic institution, to the point where we've actually seen members of the board of trustees like actually flaunt the amount of power that they have because they are billionaires. And so I think that's also the kind of challenge, is they're kind of projecting this sort of like this smoke screen of like, oh no, we're just like a nice privileged liberal place where we just are valuing these like high-minded ideas, when actually this is just a capitalist institution operating as such, right? And we have to be clear about that, right? And I think as part of that, have to understand where are the places for agitation, which is in the labor of workers, right? And the fact that grad student workers like uphold this university, and if they withhold their labor, that is real power. So I think the challenges are around kind of mapping who is responsible, but the thing we can rely on is knowing that there's worker power, right, that can basically stop the means of production, right, at this school. So I think that's been important.
Awesome. So they're talking about worker power, right? And so one of the themes that's come up is this way that Penn, like any good capitalist employer, right, silos the workers, divides the workers. You spoke to the large amount of students who are here on foreign visas and their precarious situation. How are, in like the spaces, Rick, you talked about bringing all these folks together to talk. How are you successfully building the worker power that got us here? And what needs to happen in the next 2, 5, 10 years to make sure this is a sustainable movement, a movement built on solidarity, and a movement that's just going to continue to grow stronger for the community and all the things that we've talked about here already?
Oh, I actually think that Penn makes it rather easy to build worker power just by publishing its own financials in their financial report and openly acknowledging that around 45% or something of their billions of dollars of annual budget just goes into some administrative or other expenses. Yeah, and also the incredible amount of tuition they charge to students, and yeah, it's so in terms of that, I feel that organizing my coworkers was actually the harder part. Was just the fact that we needed to realize that we could ask for more because our labor had value. Because grad workers, there's been this incredibly old tradition of oh yeah, you're just here to get training, you're supposed to work really hard, and then you get into academia and then you hustle it out. But I think just the fact that inspired by higher education organizing around the country, it has been empowering to really understand the value of the labor we provide, and for which Penn claims all the credit and any financial returns that it obtains from all of these discoveries or inventions made by graduate workers.
Yeah, I'd have to give it up to the graduate workers, the other newly organized spaces on campus. That's what it is going to take. It's going to take the fact that people do believe that they can fight for and win things that are important to them as workers. As I've said probably 3 times now, folks in the established local 590 are probably closer to their retirement than they are to starting their jobs, right? They have lived with the support of a strong contract for a very long time. So the opportunities for the newly organized spaces in the library and across campus are really driven by a younger, more motivated community on campus that is looking for collective bargaining, understands that collective bargaining is a space for them to win as workers, and the sheer necessity of the time, right? So as that new organizing is happening around campus, it really is the catalyst to other organizing that could happen on campus, because it will be successful. It will be successful, and it'll be spaces where folks who will see your wins will say, oh, I deserve that, want that too, and they'll see collective bargaining as the way for them to get there. So congratulations to the work that you and your comrades have done and Get Up, as well as for us and our museum workers, for the cultural workers that come out of the space of newly organized at AFSCME. This organizing will beget more organizing and an opportunity for all the workers on campus to be able to win.
Yeah, and I think feeding off of that, I think right now with Get Up, what is the density on campus? It's 20%. Do you know? Does anybody know? The union density is. Well, I know it's good, right? Get Up alone winning its union, I think doubled the amount of density of union workers we have on campus, and so I'm excited to see that number grow in the next 5 to 10 years, because once you start to say you have 40, 50, 60%, I think Rutgers is wall to wall union, right? Then you really do have power, and you have the power to have your contracts lined up, right? To say you can actually call for a general strike and mean it. And that is really where we start to get to the point where we can start to think of some really exciting ways to like redistribute the wealth on Penn's campus and at Penn. So I'm very excited about that. The other thing that I'm excited about is I think what's also been cool about this new labor movement, right, is there are a lot of folks who are also excited to use labor power to be in solidarity with politics generally and with like socialist politics. And I think what will be exciting is when we can use that worker power to win big on campus, but to also be in solidarity with movements in our city, right? To actually be in solidarity with PFT, to stop schools from closing, to be in solidarity with Philadelphians by saying Penn should pay taxes, right? And when you have the ability to shut down campus, you have the ability to shape the conversation. And so I think that's also a North Star that I'm excited about when we get to the amount of worker power where workers can also shape the politics of Penn.
Yeah, that got at what my last question was going to be, which is thinking about how this labor movement, this moment, plays into the bigger picture of what would this mean for the city of Philadelphia. I don't know if either Robert or Guru, you want to speak to that question too? Yeah.
Maybe a bit broader than that. Yeah. One aspect that I find really powerful about organizing graduate workers at Penn is just the fact that once we complete this program, which is about 4 to 5 years, we go into all kinds of different industries across the United States, and we bring that organizing knowledge to all of these workplaces, and we bring the knowledge of the fact that we can ask for better protections and rights from our employers, and also just the fact that there's so many international workers means that they take these back to their home countries. So it also has a global aspect to it, which I find very powerful.
All right, that concludes my questions for our panelists. So we're gonna jump into audience question and answer. So if anybody would like to ask a question, I would just raise your hand. I will call you on up, and then you can ask your question with the microphone. I would also ask if somebody who is on Zoom can, it's YouTube. All right, cool. All right. Well, if there's any posts on the YouTube, we'll just raise your hand and let me know. And anyone who's on YouTube who has my phone number, if you want to text me a question, I will, drop it in the chat and I will do my best. So if you see me looking at my phone, it's for that reason only. All right. Just introduce yourself.
All right. Hi there. My name's Lex. I'm a graduate student at Penn and a member of Democratic Socialists of America in Philadelphia here. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you everyone who turned out. This is great. My question had to do with the relationship between grad workers and the broader West Philly community. As many of the speakers have pointed out, Penn has a really parasitic relationship with the city of Philadelphia as a whole, but then also specifically with West Philly. It's intensifying its gentrification of West Philadelphia every day, displacing long-term residents, pricing people out, including also, driving the over-policing of West Philadelphia. And so my question was that, these kind of structural pressures of gentrification and stuff can often seem to pit Penn community members, like graduate workers, kind of against West Philly residents. And I was just curious about how we, as graduate workers, what we can do to overcome this gap and to connect with West Philly residents on the basis of our kind of common enemy in the Penn administration, and sort of work to, recognize ways in which maybe we are contributing to, the harm being done in these communities, and how we can build solidarity in a way that's, consciousness of these issues and doesn't just try to paper over them.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. And I will say, I think one thing that's important to like hold, right, is like, I think, obviously we kind of have these like contradictions around being grad workers, but also being attached to an institution. The community of West Philadelphia also has these contradictions where, I've heard community residents being like, I like Penn Police, I like that I have more cops making me feel safe in my neighborhood, while at the same time being like gentrification, and so I say that to say that like I actually think there's a important space for like a collective conversation about like there's this institution that uses its resources to kind of buy goodwill, but in actuality is causing a lot of damage like to us as workers, but also to this neighborhood. And being out there and being present and saying we want to play a part in charting a new path. Going again to thinking about the school closures, I was at a public community meeting for the closure of Robeson, and there are a lot of people who are very angry about gentrification and about the fact that their community is changing and that all these buildings are being bought up and all these developments are going up. And I think it could actually be really powerful for someone to show up in a space like that and to say, I'm a worker on campus, like I've been agitating for a stronger workplace, better protections, and I also am clear about the ways in which this university is not investing in me, but also not investing in you as a resident. And so like I want to come together and think about how we can fight together, because frankly, that's also the path to victory, right? Like if Penn is getting beat up by workers on campus and also getting beat up by residents on the outside, like where do they have left to go, right? And so I think actually, to me, the simplest answer is like showing up in the neighborhood, being present in these spaces where people are seeing the impacts of gentrification and being vocal about like, what can I do to change this as someone who has power in a way that they don't, right? As workers. So that's what I'd say.
I guess I would say the strongest thing that we could do is support candidates that are making sure that they are protecting the residents in the space, right? It's very, you're like, thanks. There are a lot of Penn employees who do live in the area, right? That have used the Penn benefit to be able to purchase property for years in the area in University City and the greater West Philadelphia. I'm included. But making sure that the workers don't take that benefit and then do nothing with it, right? You have to take the benefit of knowing who you should be supporting to lead, being a part of the community, and more so than just being a worker at the space, which we try to make sure that we are educating our members about the work that needs to be done, and then they also educate us as leaders about what is going on in the community around Penn and how we can coalesce around the support of that.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm an organizer with CIR. I'm currently helping physicians at Temple win their first contract. Thank you. A lot of the narrative that I've heard during contract negotiations and honestly amongst these physicians is that they're just students, and it's been really hard to get them out of that mindset and into your workers as well. And so something that I'm curious about is just how have you been talking to your coworkers, your colleagues about getting out of that mentality and that headspace? What strategies and tactics have you found effective, especially when organizing, to combat that harmful narrative? Because y'all just aren't, you're more than students. Like, I see it with the physicians I work with, and I see it with my friends who are also grad workers at Penn, but it's really hard to navigate that narrative, especially when management is telling it at you, like left, right, and center. So I'd love to learn.
Great question. That really gets to the heart of our organizing effort. And I believe that, one way that I have been talking to a lot of my coworkers is just by looking at everything that we produce and that that generations of graduate workers have produced in the past. And for example, like all the wealth and prestige that it has brought to Penn, I believe that that has been a really big part of that. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the room? All right. I had one question come in virtually. And so there's a question around with your organizing on campus, especially since the election of the Trump administration. What role does academic freedom play in your organizing? How has the way Penn responded to the anti-trans push from the administration? You've spoken a little bit about fears of ICE around students' precarious legal status. It's a lot, so feel free to unpack whatever pieces feel most relevant to you. How has organizing in this political environment been at Penn, especially with the way that their administration has tried to play ball, it feels like, with this fascist state?
We've seen time and time again Penn just capitulate under the slightest pressure applied by the federal administration, and they constantly love to use the excuse of like, the threat to science makes Penn such a poor institution that like we find it so hard to pay our workers a fair wage. But I believe that like it is exactly in these times that we need Penn to step up and set aside its financial interests and really put its money where its mouth is, and stand up to its values of education, inclusion, especially within my department and several adjacent departments. There have been several instances of research funding being cut, and Penn can protect these workers and make sure that they are supported until they can find new projects or grants that they can work on, and that has been a big part of our organizing as well. With respect to international workers, there is most certainly a great hesitation amongst international workers to be involved in any kind of activities or make themselves seen. But I believe that the only way to feel safer as an international worker is through having a strong union contract, and by forcing Penn to hold strong to its commitment towards protecting its international students.
I think this is I don't think this shows up in our contract as much, but I think that in the established spaces that are there, but in the negotiations for the new unit, for the library workers, they are very focused on these sorts of protections, especially around protections about freedom of speech, while you're on campus, and an ability to be able to voice your opinion in that space, that they very, very, very much want to call private more than it is. So those protections are very important. People will write things maybe possibly on their social media or something based on an opinion. And as a worker at Penn, they have they have used their power in spaces to hurt some of the employees in the past, and it's been very obvious to the folks that are working there. So it is a huge part of their contract negotiation to have protections in that. So yes, it's a space where you are looking to organize, and that's another space where you're looking across the country at the organizing drives that are happening and looking for language that best protects the employee in that space. So that's sort of where it shows up for us mostly.
I think just a thought that I saw quickly share around like this DEI moment is I've really kind of been thinking about it as like a little bit of like a mask off moment of like, okay, all right, we're being honest. It's not actually about academic freedom. It's not about supporting trans people, immigrants. It's about the money, right? Because I mean, I had a conversation with the administration where we asked them point blank, how much money are we talking about in terms of these grants that would be cut? And they said it was about $2 billion. As stated, Penn has an endowment of $22 billion. You could take a 2 off and still have $20 billion, $20 billion. They could fully fund all of the lost grant funding and still have an endowment larger than like, what, 99% of universities in America. And the excuse that we were told was, well, the process for these endowment, we can't use it for these kind of things, or this isn't what this donor earmarked the funds for. And it's like, well, change the rules. Like, so what other scenario? Like, we are literally seeing the descent of fascism on campus, and you can't have a procedural change for this massive amount of money that you're sitting on that could fill in these grants that you're scared of losing. And it just shows that the financial interests trump the quote unquote values of your educational interests. And again, I think it's just important to be clear about the motivations that often drive a lot of decisions on campus. I will say, I do want to say, I know I've been crapping on Penn a lot here. I do like really, and it's beautiful that it's such a space for our grad workers, right? And a place to like do amazing research and to create amazing breakthroughs and to provide amazing healthcare. And I think what I really want folks to take out of this conversation is that like you own a piece of that, and that the university wants to extract it from you and say that this is Penn's research, this is Penn's production of whatever, educating students, et cetera. And actually it is the ownership of the workers. And there's a collective ownership around the amazing research and education and healthcare and labor that this institution provides, and that there are exciting opportunities of people attached to the university that are showing that like different vision for how things operate.
I was inspired. Thank you. I have one here, and then we'll do that one, and then we'll see if there's any more in the room. All right, so this is a question from Greg Waldman, who's a member of DC 47, for those who know him. While there's a long way to go to win a wall-to-wall union at Penn and win strong contracts, is there any way through your organizing to build solidarity with Drexel grad workers and with other workers to unionize that behemoth, which is another driver of the gentrification and worker suppression in West Philly?
I think that organizing at Penn will have a very direct impact at organizing in different educational institutions across Philadelphia. By just Drexel also has a large international student population, and they would most certainly go through the same challenges that we did. And there is definitely a lot of synergy that we can build together. And I'm certainly looking forward to that once we wrap up our first contract.
And speaking for the DSA Labor Committee, we would love to help put those connections together in any way we can. So we had one question from the YouTube stream.
All right, the question reads, this is a generalized question, but how has faculty responded to unionization? Has support there helped at all? I imagine they too have their own unionization or labor efforts.
Yeah, with faculty, it's a very tricky situation because like they don't hold any power within the Penn hierarchy, but they are still considered to be part of the institution that is Penn, and these are really the people that like graduate workers interact with, and it's faculty that train us essentially, and there has been a lot of support coming through from faculty, just because like our sort of fight is not with the faculty, it's with the administration very much at the top, which controls essentially all the wages and tuition that each department pays to its grad workers. So yeah, there has been a lot of support pouring in from faculty as well, and that has also been powerful.
All right. Come on up.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, I'm Marty Harrison. I'm the president of the Nurses Union at Temple. And so I want to bring you our solidarity to all of you. So much of what you said really resonated with me. Temple is like a little version of many, many of these problems, and in some ways the inverse, because it is our physicians now who are unorganized, whereas the rest of the institution has a much higher union density, and you guys are sort of in the inverse situation. And just to put a sort of a pin in that it was really the physicians organizing there that helped so much with the campaigns of the physicians in the other institutions in the city. And so just to underline that we are definitely stronger together, and that whole point about increasing the union density anywhere increases it everywhere, or the ability to form a new organizing committee, or a new unit somewhere. And just wanted to also say about, Peter asked earlier about the bigger impact, right? How this could impact the city. And I will tell you that as a union at a smaller institution in the city, and the impending Medicaid cuts and all the rest of it that's coming down, because it's not only the fascism, it's also the austerity that is gonna cut us all off at the knees, right? And so we find ourselves in a situation where it's not enough for us to be a strong union in our little world, right? That we have to be concerned about organizing much more broadly in the city. If we are, you feel like, is it Atlas that has the world on his back, right? We feel a little bit like holding up the standards, and without stronger unions everywhere, that's going to be really difficult. And so I didn't hear you talk at all about the Medicaid cuts, and I know the finances are probably somewhat separate between the hospital and the university, but also just wondering, has that figured in at all to their arguments about we can't pay because there's this catastrophic set of cuts that are coming our way, whether it is just the Medicaid cuts or other cuts to the budget?
Great question.
Yeah, I would say that they love crying out for help, saying that, oh yeah, we really cannot afford this. What you're asking for, you would undermine what this institution stands for. But you stand for us. So yeah, I guess that's what I will say. And yeah. growing union density is in action at Penn right now. Like very soon after the graduate workers unionized, the postdoctoral workers and research associates at Penn unionized, and they are also bargaining for their first contract. So definitely stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. Yeah, and they were able to bounce off of like all of the tentative agreements that we had, a lot of the tentative agreements that we had reached to push their contract negotiations much faster. Yeah.
I think it's a great question, and I think the thing that I'm kind of thinking about is how, right, like the decision making and sort of the relationship to those cuts on campus, like, is a macrocosm of how we talk about austerity cuts generally, and that we just don't have the money. It's just not there. We don't have the money. Meanwhile, right, like in society, we have the 1% hoarding their extreme wealth, right? And you have Elon Musk, who has the net worth of like 5 nations combined, and could, I'm sure, single-handedly fill all of the cuts to our healthcare system. But we just don't have the money. It's just not there, right? And so that happens at Penn too, right? It's like, we don't have the money. We just can't backfill these cuts. We can't backfill these grants while they're sitting on this massive endowment, you know? And it's just, I think what's important is to use the organizing to like really just like reveal the lie, you know, and to show that the money is there, and that these institutions and these levers of power are just like unwilling to make them pay. And I think the question before us is like, how do we make them pay, right? How do we make the 1% pay for all of our public goods that have been cut over the last 50 years? And on campus, like, how do we make the billionaires on campus pay for the nickel and diming and the shortcutting that is happening to workers? And I think, you know, those are both the challenges and the questions we have before us.
Yeah, this is less, our sister union at 1199C does cover some of the employees at the hospital system at Penn and at Children's. And this is, I would defer to them to have that conversation, that coalition building in that space. But I will say that we have some of the public health spaces, so it's not directly connected to Penn. But I say all that to say, through all of these connections that we're talking about, you know, being able to build towards mass actions that we're having in the city of Philadelphia coming this year, specifically around May Day and the Workers Over Billionaires space that we're working to organize, not only just unionized spaces, but union and organizing adjacent spaces, our community organizations, our faith-based organizations. These are ways that we continue to build power as working people here in the city of Philadelphia and across the country. So though I may not be able to speak directly towards how Medicaid cuts are specifically towards health workers, their fight is my fight, and our fight for workers over billionaires is together. So this coalition conversation and building is the space where we get that work done and show up for each other to support the many fights that we have as working people.
All right, I think that wraps up our questions. So first, what are the next steps that you want folks to know as far as where you are at with negotiations and what this week might look like at Penn University?
Well, the equation is very simple. We have a final round of bargaining tomorrow. And if Penn still refuses to reach an agreement and give us a fair contract, we will be on the picket lines around Penn campus. So, yeah. That starts Tuesday at 9 a.m. and we would love any support. Anytime you have, feel free to drop by. Talk to more graduate workers. I think it'll be a strong community bonding event where graduate workers will be able to interact with more of the stakeholders within the community. Yeah.
The question is, Penn is a very big place. Where specifically should folks go to find your picket line?
Yes, extremely good question. So 34th and Walnut, the corner, is generally should be the main place where a lot of the organizing, and there should be a lot of presence there. So that's definitely a good place to drop by at.
All right, I'm gonna just announce two quick shout out to events, and then we will wrap up. Yep.
The other just quick plug I wanted to make is if you or anyone you know is a worker on campus who is not attached to an ongoing organized learning project and want to organize your workplace, we are here in the Philly AFL-CIO, which is creating this space to coalition workers at Penn. So literally this AFL-CIO staff is putting time and energy towards helping workers organize their workplaces on campus. So if you're interested in that, I believe Alex in the back there has some flyers about how to get involved. So if you're someone who's like, this is cool, I want to do this in my little admin office in some building, great. If you know someone else who works at Penn who may be interested in this and isn't attached to a project, definitely refer them to CWP. That's it. Thank you.
All right, so first, this event was put on by the Philly DSA Labor Committee. If you want to be a part of helping host or plan political education events like this, running worker solidarity, especially around picket lines, like the ones we might be having this week, as well as just being plugged into the most powerful, greatest network of socialist labor organizers in the city of Philadelphia. Come on down here. Our next meeting is February 28th. We're going to be right here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The other event I want to plug is the same labor committee. We're having an organizing call this Thursday evening on Zoom when we're planning how the labor movement here in Philly can help support Chris Rabb in his run for Congress so that we can have somebody who champions all of these values and understands all of these connected struggles in Washington, D.C., speaking against all the stuff that's coming from Washington, D.C., and fighting for the money. Not that Penn needs it for all the reasons that Rick has said, but to kind of have a champion of the working class people. So we're going to be meeting on their QR code to sign up is on a bunch of the tables in the back. We'd love to have as many members from the labor movement as possible there. And with that, it is extreme enthusiasm and great gratitude that I share the stage with the three of you, and solidarity forever for all the workers who have done all the amazing things that we've heard about at Get Up. And we appreciate everybody who came out to listen and to learn and to get involved in this fight. That's it. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Awesome. All right. Have a good one, everybody.